So if you want to learn more about this subject today, which is assisted living, the best real estate play in the markets today all over the world, the best, because baby boomers are getting old. And so it's the best real estate play of all, which is assisted living, the best real estate play in the markets today all over the world, the best, because baby boomers are getting old. And so it's the best real estate play of all.
Is senior housing such a hot property right now and in the future?
Well, it's no secret that the baby boomers are coming in droves. But I will tell you that the marketplace right at this moment in many major markets, many primary markets, is actually overbuilt. And as you know, real estate is hyper-local. So because that's a little bit inefficient, there's a lot of secondary and tertiary markets, a lot of suburban markets that are underserviced, that have been ignored by the major REITs, by the major national players, and frankly, that's where the opportunity lies. Well, senior housing breaks down into several different asset classes. You know, at the most extreme end of care, you're dealing with skilled nursing, and that's what we traditionally think of when we talk about senior care. At the other end of the spectrum, we have independent living, or a new category that's called concierge apartments, where these are a little bit more like a condo quality product, but they offer a little bit more services, a little bit more amenities. They don't really get into assisted living, allow people to tap into the equity that they may have had in real estate, and instead of buying a condo, they simply pay rent. And a lot of these folks will get into that space and simply, just often sign a 5 or 10 year lease.
And are there any medical or skilled professional services attached?
Generally not with concierge apartments. But then in the middle, and this is the area that's the fastest growing, is what we call assisted living. And this is where you don't need quite so much help that you need to be in skilled nursing, and you're not quite healthy enough to be on your own in independent living or in a concierge apartment.
So for the new guy or new couple starting out in this real estate venture, and let's say they're going to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a solid neighborhood, what are the opportunities, what are the pitfalls, and what are the things they need to watch out for?
One of the biggest rookie mistakes I see in this particular space is people trying to actually start too small. There are a number, of course, assisted living is one of these businesses that's regulated at the state level. So there's an awful lot of regulation that you've got to adhere to. Some states limit you to very, very small houses, 4, 5, 6 beds. And frankly, it's difficult at that size to make the numbers work. It really is difficult. The overheads end up being too high. But if you can get a facility where you can put 10, 12, or 15 beds, now you're talking. Now you can start to get the numbers to work. You still do need some economies of scale. Yes, the numbers are great. You can get anywhere from $5,000 to $12,000 per bed per month, depending on where you are in the country, and those numbers are fantastic. But of course, most of that goes to pay for the services. So you've got to have the economies. You've got to make that work. Otherwise, you end up being an owner operator, and just like you don't want to buy a job. You want to buy an investment.
So let me tell you, what services does that level need? What specific professions? Like you need a cook, you need nurses, you need orderlies, you need bedpan movers. What do you need?
Correct. So in assisted living, we typically will have one skilled nurse, one registered nurse on staff. There will be a number of personal attendants, folks who provide the day-to-day care. But you don't necessarily need the full complement of services that you would need in skilled nursing. So there will be an administrator, there will be the personal support workers, there will be the kitchen staff, and depending on the type of product that we're talking about, when we speak of assisted living, most of the time people think about the big box facilities. These are the ones that have 200, 250 beds, some of them even larger, and they tend to have a little bit of an institutional feel. That's what the major national players are playing in. They're building those types of products.
But
we, on the other hand, yeah, go ahead.
No, but that's Kim and I have had a lot of friends who were in between there, and they would buy a house in a suburb, and they might put 5 tenants in that house, and they'd have a nurse and stuff. That's the smaller end, right? That's the private end.
Correct. So so that's what we call the residential assisted living model, and we're big proponents of that because you get a better ratio of caregivers to residents. And at the end of the day, people will show up at a big box facility and they'll be lured in by the underwater treadmills and the pottery classes and all of that kind of stuff. But that's not why people are there. They're there because they really can't take care of themselves anymore. They really need the help. And so it's really the quality of care that's the most important. And you really need a better ratio of caregivers to residents.
So you don't need all the flashy stuff.
No.
Is it easier to find an existing house or to build a new house? 15 residents.
These days we purpose build them. We purpose build a 16-bedroom house. We've got a design that we're building in North Dallas. We've got some that we're building in Louisiana. And if you think about it like the letter H, where you've got 4 quadrants, with 4 bedrooms in each quadrant, and a common area in the center where you've got your kitchen, your living room area, where people congregate, where they can watch TV, where they can play cards, all of that sort of thing that's happening in the common area. And each of those 4 wings are somewhat segregated, a little bit more private, a little bit quieter, and that's how we design our homes around that.
So what would be the ideal house for 15 people?
It's easier to, in some ways, it's easier to build a new one if you can get the entitlements. And what we in particular like to do is build a campus of 16-bedroom homes. The reason for that is because residents like to be in that home-like setting. They'd rather have it be like Thanksgiving dinner every night, where there's, a dozen friends at dinner, as opposed to eating cafeteria style where the food's coming out on a steamer tray. It's a different experience.
So when you say a campus, could you have like 4 or 5? Could you have 4 or 5 of these H models, as housing models?
Yeah. In fact, we're building one right now with 5, with room to expand to 8. So that'll be a total of 128 beds on one single property.
So,
but it still creates that small feel.
So what you're basically saying is, if you're small, don't start.
You're too small.
Well, you can definitely start. No, you don't want to go too small. I really believe that 12 to 16 beds is really the minimum threshold to make it economically viable. Otherwise, really, really hard to make the numbers work. It's hard to hire the staff.
So let's get the numbers simple. Let's say it's $15,000 a month per bed. What are the expenses?
Let's go with 6,000. Let's go with 6,000. That's more realistic.
Okay, let's go with 10 because I can't count alone. So let's go 10 because the numbers are easier.
Sure.
What are the expenses per bed?
So the number one expense by far is the staffing. And as an operator of assisted living, your top 3 issues are staffing. What finding the right people, finding the right quality of people. That's really the most important thing.
So what kind of staff do you need? What professional staff?
So you'll need an administrator. Of course, this depends on the state. So every state is a little bit different. But you'll need an administrator. You'll need a driver, someone who can take people places. You will need someone who can cook. You will need a registered nurse, and you will need personal support workers. So if you have too small a facility, you end up having too much overhead. You get up around, like I said, 15, 16 people, the numbers actually start to make sense.
Can you put 15 or 16 people in a 3-bedroom house?
No, not at all.
So that's
sometimes what you end up doing. Yeah.
So that's where our friend Kathy went bust, because she had too small a house and too high overhead.
So let me ask you this, Victor, because baby boomers, you all know baby boomers, they don't want to be called seniors. They don't want to. They have this way about them. They want to be independent. So there was a new product that I've seen in several places where it's apartments, just like you said. They sign a lease and they have apartments, and they keep that same apartment whether they're independent, and then if they need more care, they stay in the same apartment, and then they have the assisted living come to them, and as they need more care, that more care comes to them, but it gives them more freedom. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, we're starting to see that again in some of the larger complexes. Often what they will do is they will have, for example, one floor that's independent living, and if they really need more care, then they might be moved to another floor. And in other cases, they've done exactly like you described. They've decided to move the staff around. When you start to move the staff around, it gets more challenging because, at the end of the day, assisted living is really first and foremost a service business. We try and make it look like a real estate business for tax purposes, but it's first and foremost a service business with a maybe 20-25% real estate component.